All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start this evening's meeting. This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, Mayor for the District of North Vancouver, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here this evening. I've asked Councillor Back to read our land acknowledgement at the front end of our meeting. Councillor Back.
We respectfully acknowledge the original peoples of these lands and waters, specifically the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam, on whose unceded ancestral lands the District of North Vancouver is located. We value the opportunity to learn, share, and serve our community on these unceded lands.
Thank you, Councillor Back. So tonight's a regular meeting of council for Monday, December 5th at 7 o'clock. Council, there's been an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, will somebody please move adoption of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Murray, second by Councillor Back. Call the question on the matter. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Council, in the package, I don't believe I actually have any minutes to adopt, so I get to move by that. So at the beginning of every regular meeting of council, we have a period of time of up to 30 minutes for members of the community to come and raise matters of import to them. We do circulate a sign-up sheet ahead of the meeting, but once we've gone through the sign-up sheet, then I will come back out and look if we still have time. I'll look to see if anyone else wishes to speak. This meeting is being carried out in a hybrid fashion. Members of council, staff, and the public are welcome to use our both our online services or be here in person to participate in the matter. So if members of the public are participating virtually and you wish to add your comment, you will have an opportunity to raise your virtual hand, and we'll have the clerk's department move you into the meeting. At this time, our very first speaker happens to be virtual this evening. We have Rosalie Vlar joining us, followed by Dastan Dargalai. And so the first speaker, Rosalie Vlar, is joining us virtually, and I believe they're attached to the meeting. Welcome. Can you hear me? You are muted.
There we go. Now I bet you can hear us.
Yes, I can. Welcome. If I can get you to speak in a nice loud voice, but welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Okay, thank you very much, Council. We appreciate the opportunity to respond to this request. We're responding to the request for a development permit variance for our neighbor's home. We do not support the two-story proposal that is being presented to Council this evening due to the height and subsequent loss of privacy. The District of North Vancouver's Coach House guidelines state that coach house orientation and sizing, placement of windows should be sensitive to adjacent properties and topography. The drawings submitted to the district on pages 16 and 21 of your package depict a flat adjacent property with a straight fence line. This is actually accurate and misleading. As noted on page 14 of Council's package, this is, quote, a steeply sloped site with a 6 meter or 26-foot downhill grade change from the lane to the street. Building 2 stories at the top of this site is, in our opinion, unsuitable and will loom over the adjacent neighboring property on the downhill slope. It is the near equivalent to approving a 4-story coach house on a flat property. In other words, 22 feet above grade on top of the 26-foot slope. Having dropped the proposed height by 3 feet in response to our earlier feedback, but retaining a second story that is 6 feet over the district maximum does not address our concern. The District of North Vancouver's guidelines also state that the size and placement of windows should minimize overviewing of neighboring residences. The drawings mentioned above do not show the window that faces the primary residence and overlooks our home and patio. Due to the proposed height, the window facing towards the principal dwelling will afford a full view of our backyard, patio, and garden, eliminating our privacy. Our request is that Council not approve the 6 feet additional height variance requested, and that a single-story coach house be built in accordance with the established bylaw. This will retain privacy for neighbors as intended, both in the bylaw and the district's own guidelines. Thank you for your consideration of our concern and request. And again, we just want to reiterate that we are in support of our neighbors having a coach house. And we would be looking for that to be a single story. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just clarify your address? So you're talking from the perspective of 1254 Adderley, is that correct?
We're at 1264. Which is next-
1264 on the,
yeah, that is the-
northeast side. Okay.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, the next speaker that we have is joining us here in person. This is Destin Dargalai. I don't know, you'll have to correct me on that, followed by Graham Elliott. Welcome. You're going to come up to the center table there and we're going to turn the microphones on for you. Apologies. Dargalai?
Dergalai.
Dargalai. Okay, thank you so much.
It's all right. I would like to start with thanking you all for this opportunity to meet you all here. I appreciate the time you have taken to review our application. As you all know, we live in the nicest, most beautiful, yet most expensive city. We are a family of 4 and have lived here since 2008, and we love it. The intention and drive behind the coach home is to allow for my family to expand in order to have enough space for my sons to grow and afford a comfortable place to live, while also staying within the same neighborhood that they know, love, and grow up in. It is not easy to keep family members all in the same place. And a coach home provides a solution that will allow us to stay together and remain the close-knit family we are. Our sons are about to enter the next chapter of their lives, and having their parents close by will allow us to be there to support them every step of the way. We are very understanding and fair people, and we share the same privacy and values as our neighbors do. We have had every intention of respecting all neighbors' properties surrounding us, and we are being as open as possible when it comes to the design of the coach home during the development process. Thank you again for your time, and my family and I are looking forward to your decision to grant our permit to build so we can plan our family future and stay together. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. And just to be clear, you were commenting on item 8.1. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker I have is Graham Elliott, followed by Bev Parslow.
Hi, good evening, Council.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Great. My name's Graham Elliott. This is my friend and business partner, Octavio Pauly. We're here to talk about our development permit being heard for a brewery and tap room at 1405 Pemberton Avenue. Mainly, we came here tonight to introduce ourselves, you can put a face to the project, and kind of try to explain a little bit more about why we want to develop this on Pemberton Avenue. So Pemberton Avenue is kind of the perfect location, we feel like, for a brewery, just with its proximity to established and emerging residential neighborhoods. You've got Pemberton Heights, Norgate, and the Lower Capilano Marine Village that's kind of going up right now. That coupled with the fact that you've got Marine Drive and 2 well-established bike routes nearby, we feel like we can really make a space where we can encourage sustainable transportation choices and serve the community. Another thing that we think we're bringing to the table is breweries tend to lift up all the businesses around them. There's positive benefits economically for our neighbors, and we're excited to be able to offer meaningful employment to local people. Through this whole process, we've been working with the development permit department, and they've been very helpful. We worked really hard to address all of the issues they brought forward and their concerns. And we've made sure that we have responded to all of those. We look forward to continuing to work with them and the city and our neighbors to make sure that anyone who has issues can come and talk to us and be heard. What else did I have? Sorry. Thank you. Right. I should know that.
That's okay.
Yeah. Another thing that we really like about putting in a brewery is we think that it helps develop a sense of community. It's a space for people to come and meet, get to know their neighbors. There's lots of businesses along there as well as residents, so it's a good mix. And I think the last thing I want to say is we just want to thank you for hearing our application tonight, and we want to thank Graham Budge over at the Development Permit Office for all of his help in getting us into this meeting and continued support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was going to say that item is at 8:14. It is at the tail end of the meeting. Normally, we would try and get these things earlier in the meeting, but this one we actually were able to move forward from the January 9th meeting to try to assist in a hardship case.
Yes.
But at this point, it is later in the meeting.
That's
so,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker I have is Bev Parslow, followed by John Lesso. And you can use the overhead camera, is that correct?
Yes, please.
There you go.
Can you make it a little bit bigger? That's the size as this. Okay. Basically, in 2018, the engineering department produced a paper on speeding in Delbrook. And over the past 4 years, there have been frequent requests to solve the speeding problem. Questions have been given to the council on many occasions, but very few answers given. Since 2020, engineering has put in pedestrian controlled lights on 3 locations, chevrons at the top, and lane designations as well, and we're thankful for that. We were told of a bump out in 2020, promised twice again in 2021, promised again in 2022, and is still not completed. It will be completed in 2023. That's 4 years for a bump out. We submitted to council a petition of 95% of the residents living on Delbrook requesting traffic calming. Again, there was no formal response from this council. Well, what's the data on speeding? Well, basically, perhaps your eyes are better than mine, but if you notice, the worst area is a 3400 block of Delbrook, which is the bottom. And speeds, the 85th percentile is over 65 and more. And 65 means that people are speeding at 70, 80, or 90 kilometers an hour. Well, what does it look like if we, and hopefully this one will be bigger. This means that we have, during the week, over 3,000 cars speeding south on Delbrook. On the weekend, over the 2 days, we have 1,000 cars. So basically, we have over 4,000 cars speeding on Delbrook over 65, which is the point at which people get ticketed. There are 2 tables. One of them is the optimistic one, which is this one. The second one is the pessimistic one. And basically what it is, the numbers could be up to another 1,000 cars based on the 85th percentile. Well, I contacted the RCMP to find out how many violation numbers there were. And I was told there were 15 enforcements last year and 26 violations. I made a second phone call to see if this was true. There was no mistake. That means 26 speeding tickets, not in a day, but over the entire year. The RCMP, I'm sure, are doing their best, but we need an engineering problem. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I wish you all a very, very happy holiday season.
Thank you very much, Bev, for your comments. If I can ask if you can put those in the tray.
Yep.
we're having some issues making that clear enough. So what we're going to do is after the meeting, we'll make sure that the clerks can
Sure.
superimpose that in a very clear way. If you can leave them in the black tray in front of you.
And can I have them back? Because I've got a new computer and I can't work out the printer yet.
We'll figure that out.
Thank you.
We'll scan them and send them. Thank you so much. Okay, next speaker I have is John Lesso, and welcome.
Good evening, members of council, your worship. The Trudeau government has committed to accepting 500,000 immigrants per year into Canada. And this was reaffirmed by yourself, Mayor Little, at a function that we attended recently in North Vancouver. And to your great credit, you did not endorse this policy, but you admitted that government cannot do much to change it. Practically speaking, most of these 500,000 people will settle in Toronto or Vancouver or nearby. However, this policy should not be used as a political excuse to allow more densification of our neighborhoods without a corresponding infusion of government money. Money provided upfront that would allow governments to improve infrastructure, streets, bridges, schools, and hospitals to efficiently absorb these newcomers into our communities. Conservative estimates are for a minimum of 100,000 immigrants per year settling in the Vancouver area. That's a huge number. Now, last week, Prime Minister Trudeau met with our new Premier, David Eby. Eby is in favor of ending all single-family zoning in municipal jurisdictions, which would include the city and the districts of North and West Vancouver. This policy would supersede our highly touted official community plans in favor of a provincial top-down approach, spurred by the federal government's insistence on bringing 500,000 newcomers to Canada each year and every year. I urge you as a council to resist this move every step of the way. Elimination of single-family zoning results in a permanent change in the traditional character of neighborhoods. It impacts the way we interact as a community. Less privacy, less green space, more traffic, more disruption as we cram more people and more possessions, including cars, into cramped street-level spaces and above. Most council members have spent their formative and their productive years in single-family home environments. Would any of you trade that experience to living in the multi-unit rabbit warrens that are being now proposed? For example, at the corner of Capilano and Marine. You wouldn't. Don't expect residents to accept a lesser quality of life than the one that you have enjoyed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we still have time left in our public input period. So if anybody else would like to address the council, are welcome to raise their virtual hand or their real hand in the meeting. Just give people an opportunity. Just checking with the clerk's office. I see no virtual hands at this point. Somebody, oh. I believe we have Leanne Hyatt has expressed an interest to speak. And you've been added to the main meeting. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Okay, hi, thanks. I'm a former, I'll just try and make this very fast. I did send a letter November the 15th, which I think council has already read. I'm sure you didn't memorize it, so I'll try and be really quick about it. I'm a former tenant of Emery Village, which is Mosaic's Living, I think it's called. And my concern is that the move-in, the tenancy move-in date keeps moving all the time, and I just need, well, I wrote to find out why it keeps moving, and my main concern is that doesn't seem to be any completion date, deadline, penalties or fees that the district has written into any of the agreements. Now, my understanding is that's a normal construction agreement thing, that if they don't meet deadlines, that they have to pay penalties and stuff, which gives them more incentive to meet deadlines. So this hasn't happened, and I mean, there's lots of reasons why, you know, the district and Mosaic say that they haven't, it's been taken 4.5 years for them to get this done. But my concern is that I need it done for my own reasons. I've waited a long time. I have first option to get back in, but I might miss it if we allow Mosaic to keep moving the deadline. So I was wondering if two things. One, if council can do anything to help hold Mosaic to the new promised deadline of April 23rd. And then my second goal in this is, will council put in future deadline penalties and stuff so that projects that have people displaced, those are the people that are affected and those are the ones that need to be held accountable, have some type of compensation that will kind of make the construction go smoother and faster so that the people can get back in. And I hope that made sense. Thank you very much for hearing me. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for taking the time to come out and comment. I'll make sure that staff respond. We noted November 15th email from Leanne Hyatt. Okay, anybody else wishing to address the public input period? I see another virtual hand over on the, oh, that's from before, I believe. Okay. Seeing no other speakers in the meeting, I'm going to say we've completed the public input portion. We're going to return to the regular agenda. There is a release of closed meeting decision noted. This is the both the acting mayor schedule for the year, the council committee liaison appointments, and I believe there's also advisory committee appointments that will be posted on the website. The decision was only made at the in-camera meeting just before this meeting, and so we didn't have it in time for the agenda. So that will be circulated on our website. People who have put forward the successful candidates will receive a letter in the mail in the next couple of weeks. And we really thank everybody for applying for the different committees, and we look forward to working with you and enjoying your comments on district policies going forward. But the successful applicants will receive a letter in the next couple of weeks. Okay, returning to the regular agenda this time, we have item 8.1. This is the development variance permit 63.21 for 1258 Adderley Street. I believe we have Yan Zhang joining us virtually this evening to open up a staff comment. Which side? Oh, actually, before we go to staff, I do have a public input speaker for this specific item. And so that speaker is Jamie Miller. Jamie Miller is joining us virtually. Can we make sure that Jamie Miller is over on the main meeting? Do we have Jamie Miller?
Hello.
Oh, there we go.
Hi.
Welcome. I'm going to ask you to speak up nice and loud, but welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Sure. My name is Jamie Miller, and I'm the architect for the project at 1258 Adderley Street. Thank you for taking the time to hear me out this evening and review our application. As my client Dustin touched on earlier, the purpose of the coach home is to allow for his family to age in place and intergenerational living for years to come. They really enjoy the neighborhood after living on the property since 2008 and just want to continue to live there and also set up their sons for success. Today, we are requesting 2 construction variances on this project. The first is a square footage relaxation, and the drive behind this request was simply to have a more comfortable, more livable square footage space that they plan to live in for years to come. Their current existing dwelling is sitting farther back to the center of the property with the initial idea to reduce the amount of footprint that the coach home would take up at the back. This then sparked the idea of having a 2-story coach home. The benefit that came along with having a 2-story was extra security, having the bedroom quarters on the upper level, overall privacy and a more functional living space split between two levels, and it also allowed for additional parking space access from the laneway, which is now an even larger benefit to have those 3 parking spaces at the back, since we've been asked to remove my client's existing driveway at the front of the property and the carport will no longer be accessible. Parking quickly became sparse for a growing family of 4, which then just confirmed even further the need for the 2-story. Privacy is something extremely important to all homeowners, and we did not take the concern of privacy lightly when it was brought to our attention. We also understood where the concern was coming from, considering the terrain at the back of the properties and laneway is much higher than their existing dwellings. My client is very understanding and shares the same privacy values as their neighbors, and that was taken into account when we originally designed the coach home, for example, no side yard windows and centralizing the upper windows as much as we possibly could. Our first solution to the privacy concern was to push the structure into the ground a total of 3 feet to help minimize the overall height of the coach home, as well as assist with reducing privacy issues. I know my client was also open to going down further than that as well. In addition to that solution that has already been confirmed, I've come to council today with a few other solutions that we hope will help further support any privacy concerns. We'd like to propose an additional landscape screening on either side of the property along or close to the fence lines. On our site plan, it currently shows a driveway extension at the back of the coach home, and a maple tree is being removed on our site plan. I've spoken with development this week, and we do not plan to move forward with that driveway extension. It will now just be grass, and we do plan to keep that maple tree and add to more landscaping to that area to provide for more privacy. Our second solution, which I also discussed with development this week, was to cantilever the hallway and laundry portion of the upper level approximately 18 inches forward, and having a bench or storage within the floor space of the cantilever of the interior, so it wouldn't be additional floor space, but it provides a kind of a block to the master bedroom window, thus providing more of a centralized view of the property and minimizing any security or privacy concerns on the side. In addition to that, we would provide a frosted transom window in that area that would also not be at eye level from the interior. Again, thank you for your time today. And if you have any additional questions, I'm here if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamie Miller.
Yeah.
At this time, I'm going to go to Yan Zhang from staff for your comment.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a really high-level introduction of this item from a staff perspective. This is a DVP application for a coach house. The variance would allow the applicant to build a 2-story coach house. So I will focus on discussing the height variance. The site is about 7,000 square feet with a lane at the rear. It's located south of the highway in the Keith Lane neighborhood. The main house was built in 1954 and sits quite far back into the middle of the lot. There is a driveway, as the applicant outlined, that going from Adderley Street currently going to the main house. And the site is quite steeply sloped. So all in all, the site presents some challenges in designing the coach house. The regulations speak to the siting of the coach house, and in this case, it must be by the open lane because there's a lane operating at the back, and it must accommodate 3 parking spaces, 2 for the main house and 1 for the laneway home. And they also must eliminate the driveway off Adderley. And further, there is also a minimum required distance from the main house and then the proposed coach house. So this leaves the allowable footprint of the coach house rather not that big. So when we look at the impact of the proposed 2-story coach house, the proposal has responded to coach house guidelines in terms of being neighborly, in terms of mitigating privacy and massing impact concerns. They have lowered the building slab by about 1 meter, which is 3 feet. So the 2-story house is actually lower than if the house were to build without lowering the slab, like flush with the lane. And then just to be clear, I think the second floor is about 283 square feet, which is roughly 40% of the main floor. So it's relatively contained. Anyway, the second variance being requested is a site coverage. The lot is not big, as I said, it's 7,000 square feet. And because the existing main house is a single-story building and has a relatively larger building footprint, including the deck. So this is, we staff deem this is a reasonable variance. So in summary, staff support the height variance and site coverage variance to allow a two-story coach house off the lane. And the applicant has shown design strategies to meet parking requirements, mitigating massing as well as privacy impacts. And we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Mr. Milburn, your staff hand is up there.
Your worship, I know that the applicant presented some alternatives or some changes to their drawing. I think it might be helpful for council if staff could pull up the drawing and show specifically what the applicant has now proposed. And staff could also introduce a modified resolution if council wishes that addresses the proposed changes by the applicant.
Are we able to do that in a way that online participants can see it as well?
Your worship, I've asked staff to forward that to the clerks, so that could be shared, so to type it up. But also, I think first to sort of walk through what we've just heard from the applicant in terms of the drawings would be the first step. So the council's clear about this transom window and this change in landscaping.
Are we prepared to do that right away, or do you want me to table the matter to later in the meeting?
Your worship, I would look to Ms. Zhang if she and her staff team can pull up the images from the agenda package. Is that possible at this time, or should we defer?
I would like, if I may, Mayor, through your worship, to just show exactly what the applicant is now proposing, and and then open up for questions, if I may.
Yes, sorry. You have those amended slides, or who has the amended slides?
I think my staff, Dayon, would be able to share the slide if you can give him permission. Dayon Torvik. Sorry.
Through your worship.
I see Dejan's virtual hand there. Dejan, you should be able to, with your current status as a panelist, you should be able to start a slideshow.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you, although it's a little bit muted. Prefer louder.
All right. Okay. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to quickly show a couple of slides to demonstrate what the applicant was mentioning about making some revisions. So this is just sort of to show where Rose's property will be, where my cursor currently is. And this is where the two windows are currently located.
I don't think we can see your cursor.
Oh, sorry, maybe I'll go to this image. Okay, so if you look at the elevation in the bottom left-hand corner.
Yes.
The window on the right is the eastern window, and that's the window that's currently proposed in the laundry room, and the window that is closest to the eastern property line, which abuts the Vlara residences. And the applicant is proposing to remove that window and instead kind of create a cantilevered storage space or cabinet. So there would no longer be a window there, and it would actually be projecting outwards to further shield from the left window and enhance the privacy. And then there would be a transom window above that, which would just be kind of opening outwards, and that would be more to let in some light as well as ventilation because it is in the laundry room.
Okay.
And then I'll go back to some earlier slides. So if you can kind of see at the bottom right-hand area, there's a red circle. That's the maple tree, which the applicant had initially proposed to be removing because the area was going to be paved as an extended driveway. And that maple tree would actually be retained, and the paved portion around the tree would remain as grass. And then they would also include some additional plantings along the shared property line to further mitigate some of the privacy concerns.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
you're welcome.
So I have, sorry, Councilor Muir, you have a
Well,
clarifying question on?
could you just, is there a photo of the, I guess the window, so the one window is moving over or being removed. I think the architect talked about the window being centered. Is that right? The back window?
Yeah, so I think the intent was the original design was to center these two windows to be as kind of central as possible. There may be some ability to move this window slightly further to center, but at this, in its current location, it's actually further away from the property to the east,
Yeah.
which was concerned. So I don't think you would actually want to move it more central.
So you see, we're not exactly seeing what your point, so it's the
No,
window on the
I
second
think I understand
floor?
what he's saying, that the impacted owner, if we're looking at the image on the bottom left-hand side, the impacted owner is to the right of that
Yeah.
property. So moving the larger upper left window
Would
further
impact
to the
them
center
more.
would actually impact them more.
Right.
Okay, is that accurate, Dejan?
Yeah, that's correct.
And there
Okay.
was some frosting that the architect was talking about on the windows. Is that for the laundry room?
Yes, that's correct. That's for the laundry room window.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, so I'm going to be moving the staff recommendation.
Sorry, through your worship, I'll display the updated language as provided to me from the planning staff, just so everyone's aware as what's,
Updated.
yes.
Okay, so I'll be moving it and I have Councillor Hanson seconding it. Just my own comments on the matter. When we retained the ability to talk about these two-floor coach houses, we were really worried about both the overlook into privacy matters, but also just the immediate impact on neighboring properties. And so we wanted to retain the ability for council to have some input on the matter. That didn't mean we were going to ban second floor buildings. It meant that we were going to have sober second thought, take a look at it and decide whether or not it's in keeping. I'd like to say that I think that the newer proposal considers the matter of overlook and impact into the neighboring property to a much greater degree. And I think it is an improvement on the project, both the moving of the property down deeper into the ground and also mitigating some of the impacts of overlook on the one side of the building. So we're always going to have, when we try to produce multifamily housing or multi-generational housing, as we're talking about in this case, in the community, there's always going to be an impact. But I think in this case, it's been reasonably mitigated. And I did just want to note, perhaps I can get a clarification from Yan Zhang, that is a building coverage max, not a variance on the gross floor area in any way, shape, or form. The gross floor area still complies with normal property. Is that correct, Yan?
Yes, through your worship. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, absolutely. It's the density is still keeping with the max. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that that was clarified in public. And so I will be supporting the motion. Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I agree with the comments of yourself, Mayor Little, on this. So pleased to support the variance. I have visited the site myself. I noticed that it is the goal of the proponents to create intergenerational living arrangements. And that, of course, is a goal that is supported by this council. In order for the proposal to proceed, it requires two variances. One is a height variance, 22 feet versus 16 feet. That permits the second story and also permits the three-story, the 3 parking spaces that would be required for the proposal. I don't believe, having visited the site and reviewed it, that these extra 6 feet will impose undue concern to the neighbors. I've noted that efforts have been made by the proponent to minimize these privacy concerns. I note the discussion of removing the window. And similar to the comments of Mayor Little, I think if every time we encounter a coach house proposal of this type requiring a variance, we hesitate because of some neighbor concern of this type, I think that stands in the way of our overarching goal of facilitating this type of housing. As to the building coverage, having looked at the site, it's clear that that becomes necessary because of the shape of the existing house, one story with a basement, and it doesn't increase the floor space as has been discussed. I did want to make one comment, which is that this property will have a covenant restricting secondary suites. And while it may be appropriate in this case and is not under discussion tonight, going forward, I believe that we should be open to the idea of having secondary suites and houses with coach houses, and that's consistent with the gentle densification theme, which was discussed in the recent election, and in my view has significant community support. So when the time is right, I look forward to discussing zoning changes that will allow both secondary suites and coach houses in certain circumstances. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Next speaker I have is Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Which on Councillor Hanson's last point, which would beg the question, Mr. Joyce, why do we have to take out the front driveway?
Your worship, maybe Dan's a better explanation at this point.
I
in
thought
this
you were in charge
proposal.
of driveways and roads.
Through your worship.
I bring this up because we just seem like we're in a seesaw sometimes. 1 minute we're trying to get cars off the road, and the next minute we're taking driveways out so we can put cars back on the roads. Like, I don't get it. And I think that's part of the problem that we've got, is that it's like this pendulum that swings back and forth, and like the weather, and we've got to get that pendulum in the center and start making decisions, not on what we've done in the past, but how we're going into the future and how we can accommodate what we're trying to achieve by maybe just not focusing on these rather mundane issues. Like, we're adding people, and if, council is going to discuss the issue of, the gentle densification and single family, but we're adding more people to this property, and yet we're taking out more parking.
Can you just clarify what policy we're following on that, Mr. Milburn?
Not all policies are good policies.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe the policy being referred to is in the street and traffic bylaw
Oh,
that
that would be
relates
Gavin.
to the principal objective when a new access is required is that it is not on the primary road access, but on the secondary road. So if there's a side road or a lane, it's preferred that the new unit access that secondary road. And it's essentially because you're introducing more conflict movements, and you want to try to maximize and utilize the secondary routes first, as opposed to consuming the primary routes, which often have flowing traffic and parking.
It's why a city is a city and a district is a district. That was one of the main differences between the two 100 years ago. Was a city you would access from a lane off the rear, and a district you would access from a driveway directly onto the main street.
Okay, it's my turn.
I do have a.
No, I'm not finished.
Okay.
I have time. Did no one stop my timer? Thank you. Oh yeah, look how much time I have left.
Well.
Okay, so I'm looking at an aerial of Adderley right now, and I can show you, and I'm not going to give you the address, but I can show you on this aerial under our GeoWeb that there are properties with both access off the front and access off the rear. Again, that pendulum, that balance. So I don't know how to deal with this right now. I don't understand. I don't want to support removing that driveway. And I don't know if that's a hard and fast rule, or just that we would prefer that people access off the back lane. I'm going to be supporting the variance. I think the applicant and the architect has done a good job at dealing with the impacts of the neighbors. I think lowering the property, it is on a slope, and there is a rise to these streets in this area off of Keith Road. But I think there's been a sensitive way of dealing with the neighbors' concerns. And I think that is the example of the variance process, that you're not impacting negatively one person or another. You're trying to find a middle ground to solve some problems. And so I thank you as the applicants for solving your neighbors' problems, because then you can have more parties. But I do not agree with removing the driveway, and I'd just like staff to advise me as to why we need to absolutely do this as part of it.
Mr. Milburn, is this a guideline or is this something we set forward as a council policy on removing, having obviously the primary access off of the secondary road?
Stop my clock.
Thank you, Worship. It's direction provided to staff through council's bylaw. So
it's a bylaw.
the discretion is always in there in council to direct staff to not enforce the bylaw in any particular circumstance. And if it's council's wish to modify that standard, in this case, council could do that lawfully. However, that's not the recommendation before you from staff.
I think that, Mr. Joyce, if we, and Mr. Milburn, if we are considering gentle densification in the future in these areas to accommodate other uses, why would we not want to retain existing parking on people's properties versus pushing those vehicles out onto the street? So I would just add recommendation to this amendment that we do not.
So with the variance, I'm going to say that would be out of order on this, but I think we still have the opportunity to have that discussion at a future meeting.
Without affecting this property?
We can talk about, well, because the enforcement is discretionary on council, we could talk about that, but.
Okay, I'm fine with that if we can deal with this, because this is obviously going to go through a process of building permits, et cetera. But I do think that we have to be cognizant of what we're going to be debating in the future and not imposing these kinds of challenges on property owners. So I'm fine with supporting it in this way, but I do want staff to report back on how we could deal with this property and future properties in regards to that. I will say, because I have 1 minute, 13 seconds left, I will say that we did have a property this year that came forward. They had access to their back lane. There had been a building, a large garage that had been constructed on the back lane. The resident applied for a front driveway. We said no, but the only way for this resident to get out of their driveway was to either go straight down or back down the driveway because there was no turning radius. And so that street and traffic did amend the allowability for them to be able to cut a driveway on the front of their property. So we really need to look at this. This is going to be the flavor of the new year when we're going to fix everything.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Muri. I have next up, Councillor Ma.
Thank you. I heard that neighbors' privacy concerns, but at the same time, I recognize the changes made by the applicant as outlined during the public input session. I think the applicant has made reasonable efforts to work with his neighbor. This application is one example of moving towards gentle densification of neighborhoods, which eventually will increase housing stock and in this case, allow large extended families to remain in the district. I will support the staff's recommendation and support the variances.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Ma. Councillor Pope.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I am very much in favor of building more coach houses and secondary suites in the district. We have a housing crisis that is only going to get worse for many years to come unless we start building them today. So I will be voting in favor of the staff recommendation. I am cognizant of the neighbors' concerns. So I too went and visited the site because I'm a newbie and I sort of want to learn everything I can about the way these things go. And I came to the conclusion that actually, and this feeds to exactly what you're saying about the parking in the driveway. The problem lies with the District of North Van's parking policy and bylaw that won't allow for street parking and requires coach houses to park via the lane. And so now we're left with this drawing that I'm, with no offense to the architect, because I think you've tried to work with what you've got, but like 2 driveways up the side of this coach house, plus a covered spot.
I mean, it's ridiculous. I just don't see why we can't fix this and make it so that we could, the owner could retain their driveway. 2 cars can park there. 1 car could park on the street. And if that happened, I'm just throwing this out there because I am voting in favor of this recommendation, but for future discussion, that would enable this coach house to be longer and shorter. And it would negate the whole need for, moving the building into the ground further to not affect the neighbor's view and all of that. If we get rid of all this parking on the coach house, we could just have a 1-story coach house. So I also agree with Jim, with Councillor Hanson, that secondary suites and coach houses, we should have a discussion about having both of those on one property, again, because of the housing crisis. And I also don't think that anyone like this family, Mr. Dargalay, it breaks my heart that people have to come before council like this and beg to have accommodation for their families so that their families can stay together. It's ridiculous. I don't think anyone should have to do that. I don't think they should have to share their personal stories with us. I think they're homeowners and they should be able to build on their land so their families can stay together. And by the way, Mr. Lezo, I live in one of those rabbit warrens and it's fantastic. It's the best possible thing that could ever happen to my family is that we live in a townhouse complex of 130 people. It's the most incredible, wonderful community. And I would take it over single family dwelling any day of the week.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next speaker I have is Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Worship. Nobody's asked if the homeowner wants to get rid of that carport and driveway or if you would like to retain it. Can I? You'd like to retain it. That makes common sense. I understand. I understand. I would just like to say that the development and servicing bylaw that makes us look at the road classifications and take the lower classification is what dictates that the access had to be from the lane. Given the time of the year, the district doesn't plow lanes. So going forward, as Councillor Murray has said, because I fully support what Councillor Murray has said and Councillor Pope, going forward, if we're demanding that any of these kind of newer developments where there's a coach house or that if they were previously entered from the front, we're now dictating they have to be from a lane, but we have a policy of not clearing lanes, then aren't we going to run into some other problems with access for those people if they're all trying to get in from a lane? Or does that mean we're going to pave all the lanes in the district? It's just a thought. I'm throwing that out there, but I am in support of this variance, and I really appreciate what the applicant and the architect did with what they've mentioned tonight. I think that's a much better approach, and so I'm in favor of this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Back, your comments?
Thank you very much. I'll be supporting your variances as well. Thank you very much for going through the process. It's a much longer process than it really should be. And I think the comments around the table point to the fact that we do need to look at our coach house policy again. We did take a look at it in 2020 and made some updates, but this is exactly the kind of housing that we need to be promoting throughout our community. Intergenerational housing is something that we need in all of our neighborhoods. And this is exactly how we want to see, coach houses being constructed and used. And really glad that the parking issue came up because it's such a big part of it when we're having these parking requirements that really don't make sense. I mean, removing off-street parking that's already existing clearly doesn't make sense. So I'm glad that we're going to be taking a look at that and having that discussion, but pleased to support this. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I see no further speakers at this time. I'm going to call the question on the motion. And I did want to clarify one thing before I call the question on the motion. So the text that's before you, which I wish we could make it even a little bit bigger so it's even more readable. I did want to note that it doesn't specifically mention the retention of the tree. That retention of the tree will show up in the submitted drawings, and so they'll have the effect of protecting the tree in it. But everything else is addressed in this here, which was the moved and seconded. Just who's the seconder on the motion? Councillor Hanson. That's your understanding, Councillor Hanson? Yeah, okay. I'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Good luck with your project. Thank you. Okay, the next item up for discussion is item 8.2. I do have a member of the public wishing to speak to this matter, and so at this time I'm going to welcome Oliver Webb up to speak. You may have to introduce your special assistant there.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me here this evening. My name is Oliver Webb. I'm the CEO of the Darwin Group of Companies. And I'm just going to briefly speak on behalf of our company in the application for 1310 Monashee, which is item 8.2 on the agenda tonight. A little bit of history, which is outlined in the staff report, was we submitted the application in November of 2020 to develop the property for a 100% rental housing project immediately adjacent to Capilano University. Earlier this year, in May of 2022, the previous council, we presented the application for first reading. During that process, there was some feedback gathered from the previous council to work with staff to improve certain elements of our application. On page 44, it outlines the areas in which the application was improved. I'd like to say that the process has been very, very successful with staff. This is the first student housing project which is adjacent to the Capilano University. As far as I'm aware, it's the first university housing project ever built in the district of North Vancouver. So we were exploring this together and making sure that this application was going to be clearly identifying the levels of affordability and ensuring that this project was built for both students, faculty, and staff of the university. This evening, we're hoping that you would support the staff recommendation to refer this project to a public hearing, at which point we'll have much more of a detailed presentation, and that would be an opportunity as well for the general public to come out and speak. And there's many people that will be benefiting from this project, such as the students from the university itself. Towards the end of last week, on December 1st, the university sent a letter to staff and to council endorsing this application. And this evening, we're here to answer any questions you might have before recommending it to a public hearing, and we have our full staff available to answer those questions. My son is also here. His name is Arlo.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yan Zhang, do you have some comments on behalf of staff?
Yes, I do. And if I may have just the perspective, the rendering of the application shared. Tonight with me is Kevin Zhang, the file manager for this application. So we're here to answer any questions, but just a very high level. So this is a rezoning application, OCP amendment for bylaw introduction tonight. The proposal is for all rental development with commercial uses at grade located adjacent to the Capilano University. This is the second time for this rezoning to come before council. When the original proposal was presented to council in May this year, council referred the proposal back to staff to revise the proposal in order to significantly address the housing needs for Capilano University faculty, staff, and students. So in particular, there were 6 directions from mayor and council at that time, and council also directed the applicant to return to council when these issues are addressed. So tonight, before you is the revised application in response to council directions. Staff believe the revised application has addressed council directions in a satisfactory manner, and we recommend that this revised application now be referred to a public hearing to allow mayor and council to hear directly from members of the public. And also at public hearing, staff will also be making a fulsome presentation addressing the key aspect of the proposal and how they are responding to council directions. So tonight at this occasion, which is the bylaw introduction, we're happy to provide answers to clarification questions or any question related to process and procedures. I do want to, however, provide some high-level responses to council questions directed at staff prior to tonight's meeting. If I can have some table up on the screen. So there are a few questions about rents, the proposed rents in the revised application, particularly how the proposed rents compare with the median market rental rates. So what this table on the screen is showing is shows the comparison of rents for those non-market units proposing development. I won't go into detail. The table is in the report and is shown here again. I just wanted to note that the rent quoted here is for the entire unit, no matter how many occupants, how big your family is, how many people are sharing the unit. So this is secured and based on the entire unit, studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom. Can I have the next table up? We also share the next table with mayor and council, which shows the comparison of those market rated units in the development to the median market rental rates. And when you are looking at this table, it is helpful to keep in mind that the proposed rental rates are for brand new building, whereas the medium rental rates, whether it's the Metro Medium or the North Shore submarket, are for all our housing stocks, including the older stocks. Yes, a similar question here. What's shown here is the related to the approximate rents for those non-market rental units at the time of building completion. So the question is about, how much the rental rate would escalate, would go up at the time of occupancy. So staff have used 2% annual increase rate here, given that the current provincial residential tenancy branch mandated maximum annual allowable increase, which is 2%, which is lower than CPI at this point, the inflation rate. Some questions about the intended tenants as well. Questions was around whether the leasing could be restricted to a certain group of tenants, say, for example, only BC local residents or Canadian residents or students. Just wanted to clarify that what the district has secured so far is what's in the housing agreement. I know it's a pretty complex legal document. As I said, staff will be very fully happy to unpack the terms and conditions of the agreement at public hearing. But what I will say at this point, just from really the key aspect, is that we secured dedicated units towards CAPU. That's faculty, that's staff, that's students. We also secured below market rental rates in some of those units. We also secured another myriad of other ways of priority access for CAPU faculty, which is essentially all the units in the development, and in terms and conditions in terms of vacancy control. So just that's what's in the housing agreement. So when it comes to what the housing agreement does not secure, it does not secure the future operator of the housing, or whether there is any side agreement between the applicant and then the potential nonprofit housing operator. And also just to say, lastly, while a local, like a developer may want to market their units towards, local market first, staff do not recommend that the residential eligibility criteria in the housing agreement be based on the place of birth and residency, because this is highly complex and potentially contradictory to the Canadian Charter of Rights. Just the last question I wanted to address here, a question about the CRU use, those commercial uses at grade level.
Yan Zhang, can I just pause for just a moment? Just a question with clarification
Can you just repeat that part again?
about the Charter of
Yeah,
Rights and
and
Freedoms.
before that?
Oh, before that. So I said, basically what the housing agreement secures is in the terms and condition in the actual housing agreements, it does not actually have anything to do with the selection of the future operator of the housing, like those non-market housing units, or any, say, dedicated additional units towards certain, any side agreement the developer may have with a future nonprofit housing provider that's beyond the scope of the housing agreement at this
And
point.
then the part about the Charter of Rights, the part that,
I think
Yeah.
response to a council question about whether there was the ability in the agreement to have a locals first policy.
oh,
And I think, Yan, is that correct? That would be complicated
correct.
with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
but isn't Cap College students first?
Yes, staff, student, and faculties first, but where they live before they become staff, student, and faculty is not able to be accommodated or considered in the matter. Okay, back to you, Yan Zhang. Any further comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say that the question is just to clarify what are intended for those CRU uses. So what's intended are basically services to the CAPU population, groceries and cafes and restaurants, and those uses are permitted and provided in the proposed zoning bylaw. So with that, we're happy to entertain questions, and thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm going to be moving the staff recommendation. Is there a seconder on that? Seconded by Councillor Back. Just my own comments on the matter. The council's considered this at a couple of points along the way. The last time, as was mentioned by staff, there were some deficiencies that we wanted to address before it moved to the next level. I think that those have been adequately addressed. I also note that on December 1st, we received an email, and this will obviously form part of the public hearing process, but we did receive an email of support from Capilano University. The previous emails from Capilano University were sort of general approval in principle. This one, I think, is finally it says, on behalf of Capilano University, I'm writing to express our support for the 1310 Monashee Drive redevelopment proposal as envisioned by Darwin Properties, which has progressed through rezoning and OCP amendment application. And so we now have the full support of the university. We have the support of the staff to move forward to first reading. Now I support that we go to a public hearing and hear whether the community, where they stand on the matter. But I believe that the applicant has made sufficient progress in order to be able to be considered by the community. Councillor Back, you were the seconder on the motion. Do you have any comments?
Just a few brief comments. Thank you very much, Your Worship. As you've highlighted, we have had a couple of opportunities to consider this, we being with the previous council through the early input, and when this did come through for first reading, I was among the councillors that did not support it at that point, but it wasn't that I didn't support the idea, because I largely think this is a great idea, a great location for housing. And I think the commercial uses are really going to add to the vibrancy and animate that end of the campus. And certainly, as you've highlighted, it's supported by the university as they look to their long-term plans as a campus. So now I think what we have is a much stronger proposal, one that's going to create the biggest benefit to the university community. And that all along, I think, has been my feeling, is that it really needs to benefit the student, staff, and faculty first. And I think this proposal is really going a long way in achieving that. So I think at this point, it does need to go to first reading so that we can hear from the public formally. But pleased to support it tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Hanson, your comments.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to support this matter going to first reading. By way of disclosure, I wish to begin by declaring that in my 2021 federal election campaign, I did receive a campaign donation very gratefully from Oliver Webb, who's a principal of Darwin, but I do not believe that to create a conflict in this circumstance because it's a different level of government and a different election, 2 elections ago. Dealing with 1310 Monashee Drive, very pleased to support this going to first reading. I have consistently campaigned on the need for better housing at CAPU, especially student housing. I also believe we need to expand services at CAPU to make it a more complete community, and the commercial uses are a step in that direction. I note the improvements in this proposal compared to the proposal from the summer of 2022, in particular, the percentage of units guaranteed for students, faculty, and staff has increased from 16% to 50%. I know this change is reflected in the proposed housing agreement, and I look forward to hearing more about the proposal and the public views as the matter proceeds. I do recognize there's a concern about the affordability of the proposed units, and that is a matter to be more carefully considered in the rezoning process. Obviously, any proposal, including this, is subject to economic realities, and sadly, market rents in North Vancouver District are very high. Nonetheless, that's an issue that we'll have to watch carefully as the matter proceeds through the rezoning process. So pleased to support it going to first reading.
Thank you very much. And just to clarify, I think I misspoke at the front end. So we're granting first reading and referring to public hearing. I may have misspoken at the front end. So just to be clear, so the developer is not, what just happened? That with this is to grant first reading and refer the matter to public hearing. The next speaker I have is Councillor Murray.
Councillor Hanson has just raised a point that the rents are high in this project compared to the Metro Vancouver median, DNV median for the market units, and then kind of all over the map for the non-market units. He raises a perspective that we could change that depending on the zoning, and I'd like staff to answer as to how that would be done. If this housing agreement and these rents actually can be changed after the public hearing, or if this is the application. I wish this had gone through early input. I think this is one of the most complex housing agreements that the district has ever written. And you need to have several PhDs to be able to understand it unless you actually wrote the thing. I just like to have staff answer that question.
Yeah, so to clarify that we would have to reject the proposal in order to go back with a different housing agreement on it. Is that fair, Mr. Milburn?
Your worship, and this the clerk may be able to step in as well. After hearing a public hearing, there are certain statutory rules around amending bylaws after a public hearing. If there is a reduction in density, for example, an amendment would require voluntary support from the applicant.
Use.
In terms of the density. In terms of the change in use, and it's a question that comes up based on what council changes in the bylaw. So if the changes are substantial enough, it raises a question of whether or not a second public hearing would be appropriate. And then we would return the bylaw back to a previous reading and then have a new public hearing, because we want to be fair to everyone in the process if there are changes after a public hearing. So again, I'm just speculating because I don't know the nature of the changes that are being thought of by Councillor Murray, but there are a couple courses of action, and it would depend on the nature of the amendment being proposed after public hearing.
So I think that's very important for council to understand what we can and cannot do once a public hearing is closed. So, and I think that's why if we'd gone to early input on this, council could have had some more informal discussion about what we're trying to achieve at this site. I understand the developer is trying to get to this approval on this property, and I think they're working hard. don't think that we can understand the complexities of this type of housing agreement on this site in order to make a good decision. I think some that follow this regularly within the community are challenged to understand this housing agreement. I don't think the general community will understand this housing agreement and how it works. For instance, there's students at the International College on Dollarton Highway. I'm interested to know how many of them will actually be able to, and there you've got your information. But Mr. Webb and council, this is why I think Councillor Ma asked me this afternoon, have we ever gone to have a workshop or a discussion prior to an application being considered for hearing? And I said no, because usually it's a lot more straightforward. But in this case, this is something we've never done before in this way. And so I think it would benefit you if we referred this. I know I'm supposed to be talking to you.
No, well.
I know, but I
Counselor, what
don't
I'm
like
just
to
gonna
play by the
interject with-
rules all the
What
time.
I'm just going to interject with is that there's already a motion that's on the floor. It's been moved and it's been seconded.
And I
It's up
could-
for consideration by the council. If you want to request that the council refer the matter away from the meeting,
I know I'm making comments right now before I get to maybe something like that,
yeah.
because I know what
But
the
we
clerk
have
is
a
gonna
proposal
say.
on the floor, moved and seconded.
Okay, so I understand that. So I'm just saying that I have challenges with moving forward in this way because we don't get to ask all those questions in a back and forth at a hearing. And yes, we can ask a whole staff a whole bunch of questions, but I think it benefits us to be able to have a discussion and have the and in a public forum, have Mr. Webb and his team there. So we truly understand what we're trying to achieve here. I think the rents are high. I think that I need to understand how we're going to be able to move those students from the International College, because I think that is a goal. And if they are going to actually even qualify for this kind of housing. I want to understand why we have made statements in the past about workforce housing, and now all of a sudden it's complicated with this housing agreement and against the charters and rights of the country. I don't understand why we can't provide an opportunity for people that work on the North Shore, because we're always talking about it. Let's keep people here in housing, and yet we can't even do it, according to our staff. I was going to propose exactly that, North Shore first. I want to know why we are so far above in the market, over $1,000 for a 3-bedroom in market rents, above the Metro Vancouver median rent. Oh, it's flashing at me. I'll come back again. And then there's an additional cost. So I'm not saying no, but I think we need to have a discussion. And I don't think the hearing is the best place to have this discussion if this project is going to be successful.
Ms. Lance, did you have a comment you wanted to add to the meeting at the moment?
Yes, thank you. Through your worship, I just wanted to clarify that the bylaws being considered to be referred to public hearing are not those tied to the housing agreement. Those are simply given first reading at this time. It's the rezoning and phase development and OCP amendment bylaw. Thank you.
And a reminder that when it's an OCP amendment, it requires 4 votes from council. Absolutely. Okay.
Yes, thank you, through your worship. Not all of these bylaws being considered for first reading are requiring referral to a public hearing. Only the ones that change the land use or rezoning or amend the official community plan are required to go to public hearing, as well as the phase development agreement. So those 3 would be referred to public hearing. However, to consider all the bylaws as a collected unit, they're all being given first reading at this time so that they proceed for adoption at the same process rather than adoption of some bylaws later.
About the process, that's fine. Yeah, that's welcome. That's okay.
Jordan's my mic man. Does that mean that we can consider the housing agreement at another time? And so if we were to have a public hearing on these bylaw amendments, and it came back that a bunch of people said it's not affordable and we want it to be more affordable. Can we at that time renegotiate the housing agreement to make that happen?
Defer to the planning staff for that question as it relates to their process there.
Okay.
But I will say just generally, if I may, Dan, before I let you go in, that if you're going to change the math of the housing agreement and you're going to require more contribution to it, invariably, you're going to be changing the use or density of the site, which is invariably going to cause us to have a new public hearing and a new bylaw. And so, so yes, while the housing agreement itself doesn't automatically do that, it's probably going to trigger a change in the use or density of the site, because otherwise, the developer is not just going to, contribute more money to lower the rents going forward. They're going to want to talk about what the impact would be on the project as a whole. Is that fair, Mr. Milburn?
That's correct, Your Worship. And just to add, so council is totally clear on this point. Council is not obligated to move a bylaw forward at any stage, including third reading, including final reading. So if at any point council feels that the bylaws before them are inadequate, they can choose not to have further readings. They can also choose to refer the matter back to staff and raise concerns, as was done with the previous first reading consideration. So it was referred back to staff. We're certainly open to that. The process accommodates that going forward. Thank you.
If council's not satisfied at the time we do the public hearing, we can refer the matter back to staff and take additional steps at that time. Okay, the next speaker that I have, sorry, I had, who was speaking at that moment originally? Okay, so the next speaker that I have is Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Your Worship. Also, in the spirit of full disclosure, another councillor and I did meet with the applicant at the Dollarton student dorms before I drove on to the subject property at next to Capilano University. As a new councillor, I wanted to get a sense of the two properties and to understand the indirect relationship between the dorms and the new development. I agree with Councillor Murray. This is a complex but a unique proposal, and I don't have a PhD, but I do bring some different experience because of my background, having worked in the real estate department at BC Housing for 6 years and been involved with property and lease management at BCIT, and also dealing with international students at BCIT. Affordable housing is a key concern, whether it's for students, staff, faculty at CapU, or general workforce rental housing for people who work in the district. I think this is unique in that the developer is proposing to build rental housing that would benefit Cap University, but it's not on the university property. I note the recent letter of support from the president of CapU, so that was very important in terms of my consideration. I want to thank the staff for negotiating the housing agreement, and I recognize that the owner-operator will have a significant undertaking to ensure continual compliance with maintaining that 50% of the units are for CAP students, staff, and faculty. That is not to be taken lightly. That is significant undertaking. I know that this is only first reading and there's more details to come. And, but now I want the public to have a chance for input. So I will support the staff recommendation to give first reading and to refer to public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ma. Council, I see no further speakers. Oh, Councillor Pope, go ahead. I'm just going to check on your microphone again. There you go.
I'll get it eventually.
There you go.
Yes, I support this as well. I do feel, again, that we need all kinds of housing, not just affordable housing. And make no mistake about it, this is not affordable housing. This is out of range for some students. Although I was the other councillor that accompanied Councillor Ma and learned quite a bit and investigated further by looking at what the students at the Innovation District, the Capilano U current housing are paying and what they would be paying here. And it actually, when you factor everything in, it's relatively the same, which surprised me. If you have two people sharing a studio unit and they're not paying a meal replacement or a meal fee, which they have to do at the current housing, and they're not having to pay for transportation because they can walk right next door to their classes, then it comes pretty close. So that surprised me a little bit. But what I am disappointed with is I wish there were more non-market housing. And I'm disappointed about that. I do think that this fills a huge need for faculty, staff, and people who work at CapU who make good salaries, but they still can't afford to rent places in North Vancouver. So I think it's definitely needed for that. And I am concerned about, it was me that asked about having a locals first policy. And I don't quite believe that that's not possible in this case, because after all, a CapU has like a cap on the number of foreign students they have. And my concern here is I don't want to see us building more housing for rich people, because that's not what's needed there. We do need to keep it as non-market housing, and if we don't cater to locals first, then it will be people who inevitably are shipping their students overseas to come here, and we value them very, very much to be attending our schools, but I don't think we should be subsidizing those units, or at least providing discounts to, I'm really just talking about the non-market units here. I think that we should have a locals first policy on the non-market housing units. And I really welcome a public hearing so we can hear from more students. I think they've got a lot to say about affordability. And I would also like to really hear from people from CapU who will be looking forward to moving into this building because they can afford it and they won't have to commute anymore and they won't have to cause more congestion coming and going over the bridge because they'll be living here, which is another big problem we have. And one more thing, in the housing agreement, I would also like to see it be made pet friendly. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker I have a second time, Councillor Murray.
How are we going to add in pet friendly? I would like to understand why this can be considered for prioritizing students at CapU, but it cannot, based on staff's comment, it cannot include prioritizing after those units are filled with CapU students, why it cannot go out to current workforce employees in the district, such as first responders and DNV employees, service employees in the municipality. I don't understand why we can't do that when we're already prioritizing CapU students for this project. So I need to understand from staff right now, the questions are being asked. It's happened too often where these questions are asked at first reading, then we get to the hearing and it's like, sorry, you can't do that. You should have added it in at first reading. And then we've got 2 new counselors right now. This is the most complex housing agreement we've ever written. And you know, it could be sent back, it could be defeated. I think everybody wants to hear what the community has to say. I challenge the community to get through this package and understand it, to be able to provide comment. Yes, they want housing, but will it actually trigger them getting housing in this project? So I need to understand.
I'm going to refer the matter to staff for a response. I did just want to address something that's come up a number of times. So the district of North Vancouver is not subsidizing these units on an ongoing basis. There is no partnership that I'm aware of, although you may be seeking partnerships with other government funds to be able to subsidize it. It will be up to them to set the agreement on how they subsidize the units. Our contribution is uplifting the zoning from PRO to a higher density in order to be able to accommodate the project. And what we're getting back in terms of that is all of the things that have been identified in the project. So we do not have an ongoing subsidy. This is not going to be considered subsidized housing. It's not even really, I mean, well, I guess it has a schedule, so it sort of seems as a non-market component, but the reality is it just It has an agreement with Capilano University in order to be able to produce what Capilano University has asked for. And so I go back to the letter from Capilano University. They are the ones who've gone through the housing agreement. They're the ones who are satisfied that it adds to the university. And so I'm taking that as being sufficient for us to at least move forward to the public hearing process. The clarifications I'm seeking from staff then, I guess, are I can't recall the district ever putting a covenant in place over a pet-friendly regulation. We certainly don't have that. Do we have the ability to do that? And two, also, we don't have one of the challenges of many of the workforce housing agreements that have been proposed in the past is that they're not enforceable on the back end, meaning if someone loses their employment in the district, they no longer have, you don't have the ability to actually remove the person. We would have had full control over the use of the space if there was a sole tenant and if Capilano University had rented the entire space, then they could have used the university policy in order to be able to move people out of the space at the tail end. But we don't have that in this agreement. There is no subsidy from the District of North Vancouver, so we don't have the ability to pick who goes into the space or set the terms of an agreement for subsidy with another organization. So what is left, Mr. Mulder?
Your worship, happy to clarify. In terms of pet friendly, which I assume is that a certain types of pets would be permitted within the units. There are certain covenants that can be arranged if that's council's wish, that could be a conditional final reading that would necessitate the allowance of certain types of pets. I would suggest that would be something that we'd want to have some discussion with the applicant on to come back with some advice for council on the potential impacts of that. We are dealing with a more transient population than we are in an ongoing rental situation. So there might be concerns about pet care during transient periods. So what I'm saying is it's not a straightforward pet-friendly issue. We'd have to have some discussion. In terms of the guarantees provided in the housing agreement, these are secured by bylaw and are applicable to any subsequent owner of the property if council approves those bylaw amendments. And so that it would secure both the student guarantees that are identified in the housing agreement, as well as the rental rates. And they would need to be enforced by the owner of the property. Their failure to enforce those terms actually leads to penalties against them, as well as, of course, other consequences like council essentially canceling their agreement if it's insufficiently being enforced. So we have also a reporting requirement that is reported annually in the housing agreement so that we can guarantee that all the provisions in the agreement are being continuously monitored and enforced. And so, yes, the terms, Your Worship, that have been noted in the agreement are enforceable under the agreement and enforceable in law, and whichever owner owns the property ultimately. The last point I would make is that there are some terms being tossed around about workforce housing versus student housing versus locals first. The response by staff was with respect to requests to have some sort of preferential housing based on people's place of residency, their current place of residency. And staff expressed that there is concern with that from the perspective of complexity. Okay, it's very complex to be able to do that because does that mean council wishes to deny convention refugees or First Nations people who don't live here, but this is their traditional territory? There's a whole host of potential residents who might have a very legitimate interest to move into the District of North Vancouver, but are not currently local residents. So it's a highly complex area to regulate in. Secondarily, staff noted that this is a potential breach of the Canadian Charter Rights and Freedoms. We would have to seek legal advice in order to give council advice with respect to regulating based on place of origin or place of birth. Thank you.
So you have 35 seconds.
I know I have 35 seconds. So I didn't say anything about place of birth. I was talking about if they work here.
Well, they'd be faculty with the university.
But what if all of those units were already exhausted and then the rest of the market units go out? Could we not offer it to people that already work here that are commuting from Mission? Because all I ever hear is we want to keep people that have to drive so far away closer to where they work.
Yeah, council, we've been considering this matter since 2019. It's come forward to council on a number of occasions. At this point, saying that we want all of the remaining units to be workforce housing and a bunch of other things. this is probably excruciatingly aggravating for anybody trying to bring the matter forward at this point. If the district wants to have a policy on pet friendly, we should talk about that issue. I think I agree with staff that there is a huge amount of complexity in getting a workforce housing agreement that actually works when you don't have a head lease by an organization with the authority to remove people out. Municipalities do not have the authority to evict somebody out of a unit. And so that's been the weakness of all of those agreements is your ability to act at the tail end. And so I'm at a bit of a loss here as to what to do moving forward. At this point, we're considering first reading. The item will go forward to public hearing. I don't expect the item to end up on our calendar until the tail end of January. Would probably be the earliest time that we could consider the matter at public hearing. So we're talking about still having an opportunity for 5 or 6 weeks to discuss what could be considered. But I got to tell you, there's the public subsidy into this project is only the uplift on the property. And we're trying to throw all kinds of other conditions in that make it harder and harder for this to be a viable project. And so if the community comes back, I fully expect the student union to come back and say that the prices are too high and that they want to negotiate a lower agreement, or that they want to have a partnership with the university and have the university subsidize the rates to bring down the rates. I fully expect that view to be represented in the public hearing. But at this point, we're considering first reading on the project as presented. The next speaker I have is Councillor Pope on your second time speaking, and then Councillor Forbes. Councillor Pope.
Yeah, and I totally support this. I want it to move forward. We desperately need this housing. I just wanted to pick up on your one point about, you know, the housing agreement, as I understand it, is going to CAPU will be regulating and vetting almost everybody that's in there for their income levels when it comes to renting those market units. So if they can legally vet renters for their income levels, then I still fail to understand why it would be so complex to just throw in another criteria there, such as people who work in the Lower Mainland already, or live in the Lower Mainland already, or anything like that at all. That's it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Forbes, your comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't want to repeat a lot of what's been said. I agree with some of it and I disagree with some of it. But my main concern still on this project, I agree we really need housing. So it's not a question of needing housing. It's a question of the developer trying to give the best he can give, and for the district to try and get the best we can get. I'm still concerned about the rent prices. I think they're high. And I think a comment was made in the discussion about, you know, some faculty won't be able to afford these units. Well, if faculty can't afford them, I'll bet you 99% students can't. And we need to cover for the students. That's my first concern is the students. And obviously the second concern, very close, is the faculty, because without teachers, you won't have students. So both are extremely important, but the pricing bothers me. I also noted that this project's not going to be completed till 2027. And in the meantime, ready to be moved in. And in the meantime, though, the rents will go up 2% every year from the time of the agreement. So the rents are going to start higher. And then I don't know what kind of increases after that. So I already find them high in 2023. So by the time we get the extra 2% added on, and then whatever changes in the market happen, they're going to be expensive units. And I would suggest that it will end up being all faculty. It won't be students, and students are still my prime concern. I do note that there is a 362 bed student housing development permit that's been issued by the Boza Center. So there is some more student housing that is coming online. The other the other thing is, it's kind of out of our control because does the university do all the vetting for who, is there an agreement between the developer and the university? And the university will vet the incomes? Are they the ones that are vetting the incomes and who would get in and who wouldn't get in? And I also would like to see that this gets offered locally first. I understand some of the complications that have been mentioned, but we really, really need workforce housing as well. So if there's any way that we can get that somehow into the agreement, I'd like that. And the only other comment I have is I am grateful for the change from 265 just market rental units to changing that to 157 in order to provide more market rentals guaranteed for CAPU, whether it's students or faculty. So I do appreciate that, but I'm still very disappointed that we're still at the same number we were at for non-market rentals, only 32 out of 315. And I never liked the terms non-market because you don't know what that means. Non-market could be 1% below the market. What is non-market? Do you have a number that you're kind of thinking of when you say non-market? Because it, like I say, it could be anywhere from just 1% below the market.
So I'm just going to clarify. I will ask you to clarify one thing, Mr. Webb, which is who will be vetting the students' finances and capacity to qualify for the program? Is that something that the developer will do, or is that something the university will be responsible for? And the reason I'm being so narrow on it, what I want you to respond to is we have a public hearing coming for this, and the developer will be able to have a more fulsome presentation at the time. So if you could address that specific issue, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Worship. No, the university will not be vetting that. That will be governed by the housing agreement that would be as part of the proposal.
So a student would apply to Darwin for the unit, and Darwin would apply the policy and decide whether they qualified. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there would be, based on the non-market units, there would be a requirement for we would actually have a non-profit housing operator that would be managing those units, and they would be making the application through that non-profit organization. We've expressed through our previous application that we're working with the First Nation Housing Society to possibly allocate those units to one of the nations.
There would be one or more nonprofit arm's length organizations that would handle the filling of the units.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Yep. Okay, Council, we've had a pretty good go round on this. In fact, I do have another hand, but it's from someone who's spoken twice already on the matter. Mr. Milburn, you have something you need to clarify?
Yeah, just to verify the statement made and that the housing agreement currently stipulates it must be a nonprofit housing provider that provides the service. Also, the final clarification is staff have been diligently documenting the questions raised tonight, and we will endeavor to, if this matter is moved forward to public hearing, and make sure that between the applicant and ourselves, we answer all those questions as well. We're certainly open to receiving additional questions after tonight if the matter moves forward and responding to those in the public hearing.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Milburn. Council, we have this has been moved and seconded. We've had a full discussion. We have 14 items on the agenda tonight. We kind of need to move along, so I am going to call the question as is. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Council. Okay, next item is item 8.3. And just before we introduce this, because this is the first time we've dealt with one of these with the new council, I did just want to quickly say, some organizations do a one-year budget. The District of North Vancouver does a 5-year budget. And so while we do have an annual point in time that we talk about new capital projects, we do have a point in time in the year that we determine what the amount that's going to go against the tax levy and how that's going to be distributed is addressed. We can at any other point during the year do a financial plan amendment to adjust for market conditions, to adjust for changes in project scope. And that's what we're looking at here. It's not the full budget process. It is a financial plan amendment to address sort of an inter-year challenge. So you can expect these to show up. They are not representative of the full budgeting process that we will be going through. I'm looking over to finance. Mr. Daniluk, do you have some opening comments on the matter?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I do. As is normally the case, the financial plan must be amended for changes that have occurred since adoption of the plan has occurred earlier this year. A number of challenges were experienced this year and have led to project delays and increasing costs, most notably construction inflation. Changes to the financial plan are outlined in the report, including additional capital expenditures related to market conditions, as you mentioned, and the acquisition of land, as well as a few others. I'm happy to answer any questions related to the report.
Okay, looking to council for a mover on this matter. I'm happy to move the staff recommendation. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ma? It's the only way this is going to happen. No, I appreciate the update. We're all very well aware of the challenges that we're going to be facing this year as we see the lowered purchasing power of our dollar, in large part due to tremendous amount of spending by the federal government and production of new currency. That causes a decreased purchasing power of our dollars, and it may have been done with good intentions to help us through the pandemic. But now we have the bill to pay, which is a decreased purchasing power of our dollar and an inflationary amount that affects it in order to be able to become whole again. What that's going to do is in the interim time, it's going to have some significant changes to our budget, both our ability to attract contracts and services, our ability to purchase land where we need to, and we're also seeing it in terms of our materials that we have to buy. Now, in years past, we've had a high year for wood prices, but typically metal wasn't also high or concrete wasn't high. And so we've been able to work our way through those kinds of inter-year changes. But with inflation, everything is higher and everything is going to impact our bottom line. It is not just one material or another material or a simple source of labor. It is across the board. And so this is unfortunate that we have to be in this situation. We always want to put everything in terms of project costs back on the table in terms of priorities and what we have a deliverability challenge on. But at this point, I will be supporting the staff recommendation for this amendment. Councillor Ma.
Don't really have anything to add, but I do have a question. So is it through your worship to Rick?
Thank you.
Rick, council is to meet again to discuss priorities for this year and next year. Would that be another opportunity to review or amend the financial plan if necessary?
Your Worship, to answer Councillor Ma's question, yes. When we get back together to take a look at council priorities, we will be sharing an update on the capital plan. It's a rolling capital plan. So it's updated on a quarterly basis and more regularly annually with council where additional details are provided. So definitely the answer to your question is yes, there will be more details to go through in the future.
Thank you very much. Councillors Forbes and Murray. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. The normal procedure, as I'm not sure if you said it or not, but it's usually there are amendments in the spring and in the fall. So we will have a spring amendment for sure, and we will have our goals set out by then, I'm sure. Well, I realized that a lot of things impacted causing increases. A lot of this is coming from the capital plan contingency, most of these adjustments. And so at the beginning of this term, and even when I was running again this time, I wanted a review of the capital plan. Now I realize projects that have already been started, we can't just stop them. But projects that haven't been started, I really would like to do a review. I don't want to just assume that something that's going to start in 2 years, 3 years, that we're still going to stick with that. Because of the changes in the market, I think we need to look at the capital projects that haven't been started or already partially funded. And we need to look at our priorities in that, because as Councillor Murray said earlier this evening, we need to live within our means. And anything that we don't live within our means gets passed on to the taxpayer in terms of tax increases. And we already know that because of metro charges for water and sewer, we're going to have fairly large tax increases just because of that. So I really want us to look at capital projects that have not been started. Thank you.
Thank you. I have responses from Mr. Stewart and from Mr. Joyce. Mr. Stewart.
Your worship, and Gavin will probably confirm this. I know he will. We've already started that process.
It's on.
We've already started that process. And we'll be talking to council about the kinds of projects that we're going to defer in order to have the kind of balance in our budget. We know that this is going to continue to be volatile for the next year and a half. And there are a number of ways that we can approach this to make sure we're managing it properly. So you can look forward to that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Joyce.
Yes, through your worship, that workshop with council is next week on budget priorities. So there is some projects we do want to go through with council at that time. Back to the mayor's comments. I don't think I've ever seen 3 years like the past 3 years, but I do want council to know we go through quite an exhaustive process, third-party review of estimates. All our projects go out for BC bid and are bid on, so it's very transparent and open. So what you see are just real costs that are coming through with some of the projects. And again, next week we'll be talking about council. We expect this volatility to continue into 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Joyce.
Well, I don't think that we've seen.
Next speaker, Councillor Murray.
Thank you. I don't think we've ever seen a time like this in our history because of a climate change and a pandemic that has come from climate change, in my opinion. And when we talk about these adjustments in, previous years, we've always had them. But, and I think you talk about, having to defer work and, the challenges of construction inflation. It's not just construction inflation, it's supply chains, it's boots on the ground, it's labor. And it's in every part of our region, our province, our country, the world that is experiencing these things. Never have we walked into grocery stores and seen empty shelves. We've never seen that before. We don't know what that means. Our parents do, our grandparents know what that means, but we don't. And it doesn't seem to be improving. And then there's just, employees to be able to pull off this work, and not just the ones that are building all of these projects in the capital plan, but those sitting behind you in the building, pulling all this work off, right? And I think that's something that we haven't dealt with before. We haven't had this many vacancies. I use 67 vacancies in the City of Vancouver Police Department, 62 in the district. I don't know if that's still the current number, 100 vacancies at BC Housing. So it's not just, the municipalities, it's every sector of our society that is being challenged. And then there's those cumulative totals, and those cumulative totals coming from Metro in regards to utility charges that will be added on to that one taxpayer that we all are. And what is that going to look like? The cost of gas and fuel goes up and down. Food goes up and down. Everything is more expensive. And we were already the most expensive to begin with. So I hope that we're going to have some really just tear apart open discussions and really sort of commit to pulling back and living within our means. I've been looking at Ron Andrews' pool for years thinking, we got to do something. But we have some pretty amazing ways to try to keep it standing. We built cinder block bathrooms years ago because that's what you did. And are they sexy? No, but they work. There's some stuff, and I go back to the nice, should, must, and we really do need to implement that very annoying statement that one of our previous counselors used to make on a regular basis, but it's never been more true than it is now. And I don't think we haven't been subjected to that over the years because we're growing and we're building and we want to replace and we want to adjust where we can. And I really don't think that we can plan like that anymore. I think we really have to pull back and live within those means. Obviously the list is, and there's a lot of stuff you just have to do. And usually that's what the list looks like when it comes forward at this time. So I look forward to that conversation. I know Councillor Forbes is on that, and I know we'll have some good in-depth discussions about this, but it's a huge concern, the costs of living anywhere.
$6 head of lettuce, I think is what I saw the other day, which is a bit much. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it is true that a lot of what we see here are inflationary and adjustments. That I do want to highlight for the public, the largest single amendment is $9,100,000, which was spent by the district to acquire 1801 Capilano Road in Lionsgate Village. So that's obviously an expenditure for which we're going to get reciprocal value, namely that property. And I certainly believe that property has a lot of value to us. So I just, if you strip that number out, the other numbers become smaller by comparison. And just wanted to highlight that. Thank you.
A $9 million purchase on that one. Well, no, it is. It's 9,000, 100,000. There you go. It is. There you go. Lots of them. I see no further speakers on this matter, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you, Council. The next series of items up for discussion were items that we started at the last meeting of Council, and we gave them first reading and provided an opportunity for councillors to ask more questions of Mr. Daniluk along the way if you would like. So this matter is being considered for second and third reading. I'm happy to move the recommendation. Is there a seconder? I can, if everybody's okay with me doing that, I'll move all of, so that is through 8.8, correct? So 8.4, 8.5, 8.6, 8.7, and 8.8 were all considered at the last meeting for first reading. We'll now be considering them for second and third reading together. Okay, I'll be moving that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Murray. No further comments from me. You can refer to my comments from the last meeting of Council on that. I thought staff did a great job of explaining the philosophy behind the increases at the last meeting, and I will be supportive. Councillor Murray, further comments?
Just as we move forward in the discussion of the budget, it is just that addition of increase in the fees constantly. Again, we're going to have to start looking at that as well. Like, how does that, it's just, when does it go up? Like lettuce, when lettuce is $9, are we going to be eating lettuce, right? When do the fees hit a ceiling, right? And maybe looking a little bit more closely at the fees and exactly what we're raising, what we're trying to achieve. I think the sewage connection bylaw is a discussion that we're going to have, which has to do with building and permitting and a threshold of a trigger.
And our ability to get labor. So, okay, I see no further speakers on items 8.4 through 8.8. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council, and a special thank you to staff for spending extra time to go through those. We didn't want to railroad Council with 120 pages of information, very dense packages right out of the gate, and so we did extend it to a second night.
Move 8.9.
Item 8.9 is up for discussion. Do we have any comments
No,
from
it's
staff? This is just for adoption. So it's been moved by Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder on the matter? Second by Councillor Back. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council.
Move 8.10.
Item 8.10 is the 2023 council meeting schedule up for council's consideration. It's been moved by Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Back. Any further discussion on this item?
Question.
Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next item is the community heritage grants. We do have staff here to make just a quick comments about this process. Do we have, and I believe we have Shannon Lammy on the line here. So if you want to open up, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of Council. I'm here tonight to discuss the community heritage grants. Since 2009, the district's Community Heritage Grants Funds has promoted heritage conservation by providing financial assistance for renovations and maintenance to the owners of single-family homes listed on the district's heritage inventories or on the Community Heritage Register. The Community Heritage Register includes a total of 139 heritage properties across the district. The Provincial Local Government Act authorizes local governments to establish a register by council resolution. These heritage register properties are eligible for a number of incentives and are subject to the Heritage Procedures Bylaw, which enables the district to temporarily withhold permits. Initially, grants of up to $500 were provided to property owners. In 2019, however, Council approved the Heritage Strategic Plan, which subsequently won the Heritage BC Recognition Award in 2021. The Heritage Strategic Plan identified that one of the best incentives to conserve heritage was to offer direct funding opportunities such as grants. To support this implementation of the Heritage Strategic Plan, Council approved $50,000 for the Heritage Grants Program in 2020. This also included increasing the value of available grants from $500 to a range of $1,000 to $10,000 based on 50% of the project costs. This year, the Heritage Advisory Committee and staff are recommending funding for 10 heritage conservation projects totaling $34,197. $2,706 of this will be drawn from the Community Heritage Grants Fund, which is held with the North Shore Community Foundation. Thank you, Your Worship and members of Council. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Ms. Atva, I see you on the call as well. Did you have any additional comments?
Good evening, Your Worship, members of Council. No further comments. I appreciate Ms. Lambie's overview for Council tonight. I'm just happy to come back with this year's annual grants for your consideration.
Great. Thank you very much. Council, I'm looking for your direction on this matter. Moved by Councillor Murray, second by Councillor Forbes. I don't think you're on the list yet tonight, so. Any further comments?
No,
Councillor
great
Murray?
presentation. I'm very supportive.
Thank you very much. Councillor Forbes, additional comments? Microphone.
No, I'm in favor. I just think it's really good.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from members of council? Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, just very briefly, I don't let an opportunity concerning community heritage grants pass without saying that I personally would support greater resourcing of heritage protection in the district. And if we look at the total of these grants, $34,000, and the quantum of the individual grants, it's I think a very small step in what could be a much larger project to protect heritage in the district. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. I will just add to that and say, you know, the challenge is it could be 100 times in magnitude. It will still come down to a thoughtful, caring owner taking custody of an important piece of heritage and really putting their own sweat equity and value back into that. The community of people that have the stewardship of all of these houses in our community is excellent and connected, and they share their stories with each other. And we really couldn't, there's no amount of subsidy could really make it worthwhile to walk into some of these houses and make them properly livable, but also protect them in perpetuity going forward. But so thank you to them for the contribution that they make to our community. Councillor Murray.
I look forward to Councillor Hanson being on the Heritage Committee and then bringing some of those discussions forward to Council for consideration.
Earlier
We
this
have
evening?
talked about it over the years, you know, but now we've talked about also, you know, our challenging budget, right? So if we want to take something from something that maybe is not, you know, maybe is, you know, got significant amounts of funding, maybe we can look at topping it up again.
Yes, and Councillor Hanson was announced at the beginning of the meeting as being our representative on the Heritage Commission. And with his comments tonight, he'll probably be warmly received. I see no further speakers on the matter. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much to staff for your presentation. Okay, the next item is item 8.12. This is the proposed policy, council member access to general services and information. I have opening comments from Mr. Stewart.
Your worship, we have created many policies that go back actually to 1992. And obviously things have changed a lot in that time. And in particular, the creating the position in 2019 of the council support liaison officer, which I think has really helped us move and assist councillors in a better way. So as I say, these changes were brought to council in a draft form earlier this year. And council had a chance to talk about them. And this is just bringing it into a one administrative or corporate policy.
I'll be supporting the recommendation. Is there a seconder on the matter? Second by Councillor Back. Just my own comments on this is this largely pertains to the councillors. I know that the last council had a discussion about remuneration and compensation to the council. My view was that the council was not adequately compensated considering the cost of living in our community. We were not able to really advance the remuneration at that time, although we do have a cost of living adjustment that takes place. I still don't think that it adequately addresses the cost of living in our community to be able to do the job. The other way to assist is with better support services to make sure that councillors have the ability to do their jobs, manage the tremendous amount of correspondence, and have the professional staff able to assist. And I think that this policy speaks to that issue, and I'm happy to support it. Seconder on the matter was Councillor Back. I believe you have any further comments?
Not much to add, Your Worship. I think we are very lucky in the support that we have currently. I think the council liaison role has worked really well, and so formalizing this, I'm happy to support.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Your Worship. As a new councillor, I just want to thank all the staff for making me feel very welcome here and answering my dumb questions. So thank you very much. And I just want to recognize Adriana. She's been extremely helpful and very patient with my questions. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Muir, is your hand up from before, or is it for this item?
No, I was just gonna say that, years ago, we didn't have we had clerks. Clerks was our support, was council support, and the mayor and obviously senior staff had assistants. And over the years, we've really worked hard to create a position that was very effective. And I have to say that, the current situation with our support services is invaluable. I think actually, we need to get some support for our support because we're really utilizing Adriana, all of us, more so. Some of us, it sort of ebbed and flowed, didn't it, Councillor Hanson? We'd use that position and then maybe not. And but I think more and more, all of us are using, Adriana on a regular basis. It's a really effective office, and then support from the clerk's department as well. And it's something that we need to, certainly continue to evolve because it's been so very helpful. So I thank you, Mr. Stewart, for making that happen. And it's been a game changer as far as being able to get things done. And certainly the work that she does with answering the letters that we get, that's created a seamlessness throughout the organization. Whereas before it was, we were waiting to get the responses. We were trying to do it. I still do it, but if somebody puts a phone number, I'm going to call.
If you miss one, it's going to be picked up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it is it's invaluable. And so thank you for that, Mr. Stewart.
Fantastic. Thank you. Councillor Forbes.
I just wanted to say how grateful I am for that position to be filled and how you can you don't, before that position happened, you would try to remember what the question was you asked staff, and then you'd try to keep track and follow up. We don't need to do that. Adriana does that now, and she does an excellent job in this position. So I just really want to say that. And just a little bit off topic, in the last week, I had to read over almost 1,400 pages for meetings in the last week. So, and one of those bigger ones was the AOC, of course. And then tonight's package was not small either. So that takes up time. So besides all the other stuff that counselors do, I don't know that people realize that we have to put an awful lot of time in just prepping for meetings. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stewart.
Your worship, just one other point. The ability to have a one-stop shop eliminates you folks having to look through an organization that's undergoing great change in terms of turnover, and it really allows you just to say, this is what I need, and we've got the staff to go and get it. And certainly we're set up to support Adrian on that matter, so I think that's really working as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. Council, I see no further speakers. I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 813. This is the council reports policy. Mr. Stewart, your comments?
Again, your worship, this was brought forward to council in draft form early this year, and this just clarifies exactly what support you can expect when drafting reports and what the process is. And again, it's a matter of a clarification, and it replaces some older policies. I do note that council had asked if, in fact, for some reason, we withhold a councilor's report. We now have the ability to report to council the reasons for that being withheld. And we have very rarely had that, and they're primarily to do with legal and those kinds of issues. But we have amended the draft policy to include that one suggestion that council made.
And I'm happy to move the recommendation. Councillor Mary is seconding. This is in this, there's a very important change, which is that before this point, the mayor had the ability to stop a report, had the ability to withhold a report. And I think that's too much power for the mayor to have in these matters. As far as I'm concerned, all members of council have a mandate in the community to raise issues of import to them or things that have come up through the community to you. And so to have the ability of the mayor to just simply chop it off from future public discussion, I didn't think that was appropriate. I only used that power 2 times in the last term, and it was really just to delay 2 reports so that staff had an opportunity for their report to come in ahead of a council report. So it's used sparingly, but still, I think council deserves the ability to know the conditions under which something is withheld, and this affirms that it won't be the sole discretion of the mayor going forward, and I think that's a positive change. I'll be supporting it. Councillor Murray, your comments?
Thank you, Mayor Little. Thank you, Mayor Little. And I too concur with that, and I appreciate the changes. I did just want to point out too, the primary purpose of a council member report is to obtain a council resolution referring the matter issued to staff for review and for preparation of a staff report back to council within 3 months. And I note the word primary because there are going to be those instances when you're going to want to bring a report forward and it's a simple change to something. It's a direct, we've talked about it for months or years and we're just going to make a change, and that doesn't necessarily need a staff report or a long period of time. It could be done quite quickly, so there is some flexibility within this policy to consider those one-off simple items to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, council. I see Mr. Stewart, that's from before. Okay, thank you very much, council. I see no further speakers on the matter. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. The last item for this evening's agenda, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, this was originally going to take place, I think, on January 9th or something. And we said, well, we'll put it at the tail end of this meeting. If council is prompt in getting through the rest of the work, then we'll be able to get it done tonight. So I do appreciate the applicants sticking with us through the evening. And yes, we are able to take care of this item this evening. So I'm going to go back to Yan Zhang for your comments on this matter.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So this
Okay,
is
I just need to double check, Yan, hang on just a moment. It's very muted. There we go. Yeah.
Right. Can you, hello?
Much better. Thank you so much.
Okay, sorry. So this is a liquor endorsement for a lounge associated with a manufacturing license for a brewery. So just for council information, this is obviously the licensing is a provincial matter. However, in the case of a liquor primary, i.e. a pub, or a manufacturing license, i.e. brewery, the local muni could opt in to conduct neighborhood notification and consider the establishment in light of a local context and provide comments via resolution to the LCRB on the said application. So is this endorsement process that we're engaged here tonight. The subject site is at 1405 Pemberton in the Pemberton Light Industrial Corridor. The use does fit well with the tenancy mix in the area and particularly will help enhance the nighttime vibrancy for the area. We did do notification to neighborhood yielded very limited response. There was one concern regarding availability of on-street parking in the area, and there was one concern regarding potential noise. So staff did evaluate the proposed layout, the operational plans, including the operating hours, parking arrangements, and we support the application. So staff recommend council making a positive resolution regarding this liquor license application. And we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Council looking for a motion? Councillor Ma, you have a motion. What's your motion? Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Back. Councillor Ma, any comments?
Yes, as a resident of Pemberton Heights, which is just around the corner, I think this is a good location and it's going to add to the vitality of the area, especially as Lionsgate community gets built out. It's not too far, so I wish you success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ma. Councillor Back, further comments?
Yeah, not too much to add. I think it's a great location, and I note that there really hasn't been a lot of opposition at all from the neighborhood. So wishing you, both all the best of success, and look forward to visiting it when it's up and running.
Great. I see Councillors Murray and Forbes. Councillor Murray, your comments.
Thank you, Mayor Little. So I'm going to support this. But I want to raise the issue of uses with staff. I've done that before. We raised uses with the application that's coming next to Blue Shore on Marine Drive in regards to minimum and maximum sizes of units and uses. And I'm wondering if Mr. Milburn can advise us as to when the discussion of uses will be in front of council in a workshop format.
Mr. Milburn.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe we're returning to council on December 12th with a list of priorities identified by the previous council, and then seeking council's direction with respect to going forward on those priorities and timing, including whether or not council workshops are appropriate at that time. This is one of those projects that has been identified by the previous council and would be subject to that review in terms of prioritization. Mr. Stewart may be able to comment more in terms of that process.
Mr. Stewart, before you comment, I was just going to add, it's 9 years that we're looking at to discuss Airbnbs in the district of North Vancouver. It was brought up 2 councils ago, and now we're into our 3rd, and we have yet to discuss the issue. And I really need us to have a good discussion on how we are going to take these issues within the community and get them in front of council so we can have a discussion and truly prioritize them, because I feel sometimes there's other things that are prioritized and then these issues get sort of left in the background. I hear staff say, that this will add a vibrancy to the neighborhood. And, I think we just need to make sure we truly understand, that is sitting on the edge of a very commercial, light industrial and heavy industrial part of our community. And we need to understand the implications to those zones. Like Marine Drive, we blanket zoned it years ago, and hindsight's 2020. And boy, if I had a way to do it, if I was to do it again, I would defeat it. I wouldn't have allowed it to go forward, but we didn't know what we know now. So we have to be very careful of the mix within our communities to create sustainable communities. And that's about jobs and housing and entertainment and retail and commercial and all of those things. And, there's sometimes a good thing can be repeated and repeated and repeated, and it might not be as sustainable going forward into the future. So I think we have to have those kinds of discussions. I think certainly adding a facility like this in the area is complementary. It will support that, those businesses in that area. but those businesses are something that we need to also maintain. And we've eroded things over the years, and we have to be very cognizant of that. And I think we need a big discussion on it.
Your worship, just in response, we're really looking forward to the December 12th meeting because we have done a fair bit of work, and you'll receive a report on this, on what priorities staff have identified, including those that have been carried over from previous councils and those that we think are looming. And you're quite correct in the sense that quite often, in particular, as we experienced COVID and now as we've experienced some of the vacancy rates, we're going to have to be very, very specific and determined in terms of identifying what priorities we're actually going to do this term, and then look at a way to actually schedule them into some kind of a program.
Okay, Councillor Forbes.
Just a quick comment. Thank you, Your Worship. I will be in favor of this. I believe I already know the answer to this, but I just wanted to ask staff, this outdoor seating area is not considered the extended patios that we've done because of COVID. This is actually on their property and it will be a permanent patio outside. Is that correct?
Yeah, through your worship. Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to put that out in the public airways. And the one other thing is, I am in favor of this proposal, but I do note that in that area, the Pemberton corridor along 15th and 14th, there has been parking issues. And I think that we may need to, or we should, after when this business gets established, we should look at the parking regulations that we have in this area again, because the hours of this operation start in the daytime and go through into the evening. I don't suspect that the evening hours are going to create much of a parking problem, but certainly when it's in the daytime, it may create a problem with all of the other businesses that are there. So I would hope that going forward, we take a look at our regulations in that area after this gets developed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Stewart, did you have an additional comment? Okay, I just have my own comments on the matter. Well, first I'd like a clarification from staff. I mean, I know we're talking about liquor service in this, but on the liquor production side, you can have a number of the processes have some fairly significant smells from them. And this has a bit of a buffer to the neighborhood, but not much, really. It's just like the tennis courts and the fire hall, I guess, in that area. So what is the mechanism for people to respond if there are concerns of smells emanating from this facility? Either to Mr. Milburn or Jan Tsang.
Ms. Zhang may be able to comment on specific conversations with the applicant and whether or not there's been any specific studies or issues to address that. We do typically look at, especially on all commercial developments that are close to residences, we will often refer applicants to our good neighbor policies and approach. And we do have certain powers in the business licensing bylaw to be able to set terms and conditions on licenses if there is emerging issues that crop up during the year and in the renewal of business licenses. So there are certain measures that we can take into place. We know in conversations with these applicants, they're interested in being good neighbors and they wish to address the issues as they arise. And we certainly would expect that going forward if this is council's wish to pass a resolution in support.
Thank you very much. It's just normally we would put these a little deeper into an industrial zone because they can have some smells that affect the neighborhood. I guess the other comment I would make, and I'll be supportive of this proposal. Maybe I'm just making this comment to the province in general. We have this issue of licensing creep. This is where you have a restaurant license that's looking more like a pub and a pub license that looks a little more like this, and then a production facility that looks a little bit more like a restaurant. And they're all kind of creeping in on each other's territory to some degree. The Pemberton Station pub down the road has a very, very expensive license. And what comes along with that is that typically it's so hard to get that they don't end up with too many competitors in the sphere, but they're struggling. And so if we allow too many other places within the immediate area that have a much lower cost license, but can deliver 90% of the same services, then that's going to be problematic for their ability to survive going forward. That's not entirely the case here, though. I want to be clear about what food service this is talking about. In the piece, it says hot and cold snacks. So I want to be clear, this is not a commissary where they can actually cook food at the facility in its current form. Is that correct, Yan Zhang?
I'm going to ask Mr. Graham Budge to answer this question, as he knows more detail about it.
Mr. Budge, welcome to the meeting.
Hi, thank you, Your Worship and Council. Yeah, the requirements of a manufacturer lounge are that they provide at least a small amount of food options, be they warm or cold, prepared food, or just minor snacks. But that is the extent of the requirements.
So they could reheat a cold item, but they wouldn't actually be preparing raw food at the facility. Is that an accurate representation of it?
That's correct. That's the least requirement. It could be chips or pretzels, any sort of hot or cold, prepared or unprepared foods.
Thank you very much. I just want to be clear about that. Some people wonder, why is this brewery have just tapas, right? Why doesn't it mix into other areas and stuff? And it's typically because of this commissary piece that the licensing would require them to have a separate food preparation space and would probably trigger them to become really a pub effectively. And so there is an element of creep here where these lounges are sort of getting into a little bit of food service as well as the sampling pieces and selling even other people's alcohol out of their facility with a cap. But where it transitions into sort of the next license is if they have the ability to cook or bake food from a raw state in their facility. But it's a tricky area when you've got, my daughter works at Boston Pizza and it's got TVs everywhere. And that used to be one of the restrictions on whether it was a restaurant or whether it was a pub, was the number of TVs that you had. And so you have this sort of license creep that takes place in all of these spaces. So decided to clarify that. I'm supportive of the application as it is. I'm gonna get you on your mic at least.
Get around those issues.
That's true. You can, they can with a proper event permit or proper support on site. They'd have to come to the staff for a permit to do that, but you may be able to qualify to have a food truck come in and be that commissary and add to your services, as we've seen in some other locations. It's just not automatically part of this process. Hey, Council, I see no further speakers on the matter, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Good luck with your endeavor. And I believe, what is it? Blood orange, is that your favorite, Herman? Herman, your favorite, is it the blood orange that you want to go visit? Good. Okay, Council, we've completed the regular business of the evening. There is still an opportunity for reports. I'm just going to make one quick report, which is I have had a very busy week, and we obviously have a number of community events related to the holidays occurring. It was our pleasure to attend the Lynn Valley Community Association tree lighting event and partnered up with Lynn Valley Life and to see all of those trees. We also had a whole group of kids come in and do a lantern parade and then a dance and a flash mob kind of set up for the event, which was a nice surprise. And it was great to have councillors Pope, Back, Ma come and join. And we also got to recognize Jillian Const as the Lynn Valley Resident of the Year. And we all know how much that Jillian contributes to the community as her long tenure as the president of Lynn Valley Community Association, but also a key person in setting up the all candidates meetings and really every event that goes on in Lynn Valley. Jillian's been a part of that. And so I thought I would take a moment to comment on that here. Congratulations, Jillian. The other piece I was just going to mention is we were able to have the North Shore Rescue Christmas party in person, and it was so great to see those people. I'm highly confident that in an emergency, every neighbor is going to stand up and do what they can to help, but there's something so special about the people that volunteer their time and talents to prepare for an emergency and to put their family life on hold, to go out, put themselves at risk in order to be able to support people in need in our community. So I was glad to be able to be there to pass on our appreciation to the organization, and look forward to community events with them going forward. Mr. Stewart, you have a report?
Your worship, I just thought I'd mention to council, I spent 3 days in New York last week and flew back in, and with flight delays, I got in at 4 o'clock this morning. So I managed to get 2 hours of sleep.
Very well.
I just amazed myself. I amazed myself.
I see Councillor Mon. Do you have a report?
Yes, I do. Thank you. On December 1st, Councillor Hanson and I attended the Squamish Nation canoe sleeping ceremony, which occurs at the end of the canoe season. And the canoe is called Snowbird. And okay, we have some slides. I was called upon to be a witness. And this in that photo, that's Janelle Johnson. She is the skipper of the canoe. And next to her on the right is Councillor Gerard from the city of North Van. And then at the end, that's Arlene from the Squamish Nation. So I was called upon to be a witness. And one of my responsibilities is to share the story with my community. So you are my community. One of the key elements of the ceremony was this brushing of the canoe with cedar. And one of the elders told me it was brushing away negative thoughts and being prepared for the new season when the canoe is reawakened. So I just want to share that with everyone.
Thank you very much. Councillor Back, you have a report?
Thank you. Just very briefly, as your representative on the council representative on the Museum and Archives Commission, wanted to let you know that the first of the feature exhibits down at the new museum, Manova, will be opening on Thursday, and fitting given the location of the museum. It's all about the history of the shipyards area from its beginning as the Oslahan village, the Squamish Nation, to the industrial years of shipbuilding to what it is today. So that opens on Thursday, and there's a preview on Wednesday evening that council has been invited to. So maybe I'll see some of you there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Councillor Miri, your report?
I was just going to say that I enjoyed the evening with the North Shore Rescue as well, and it's nice to be able to get back into socializing and seeing each other. I know this Thursday we've got our own staff party, Christmas staff party, and so it's going to be able to be nice to see people that we haven't seen for 3 years, and I look forward to that returning to normal.
It is an essential part of work at the district, is to have a little bit of downtime together and get to know each other personally, maybe find out a little bit about families and backgrounds and everything. So very excited to get back together, because it's been a very long time under COVID regulations. And so looking forward to it. Council, we've completed the business of the evening. I see no further reports, so I will accept adjournment. Councillor Murray has brought it forward. I will accept. On behalf of the council, thank you very much to the staff and members of the public for participating in this evening's meeting. Have yourselves a fantastic evening. Good night.